daring operation in the pre-dawn hours.
I watched an operation that was so precise, that was so brilliant. I mean, it was incredible.
Good night. Happy New Year.
Well, this story is absolutely stunning in every way. First, the military operation to snatch Venezuela's president from his compound in Caracas. And now the case against him in New York, where Nicolas Maduro is accused of narco-terrorism. We'll be hearing from the former head of America's Drug Enforcement Administration in Venezuela.
I have sources to this day that are all over Venezuela.
And a Venezuelan journalist who fled the country as a child.
The Venezuelans have not seen the oil wealth in decades.
But first, let's take a closer look at the case against Nicolas Maduro.
It's a long walk to face the wrath of American justice for Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia.
They faced the judge 48 hours after their capture by American forces and their extraction to the U.S.
I mean, I watched it literally like I was watching a television show.
Maduro and his wife will soon face the full might of American justice and stand trial on American soil.
Nicolas Maduro appeared in court in Manhattan with his legs shackled and he was handcuffed. When asked to confirm his name, he defiantly said he was still the president of Venezuela and he'd been kidnapped.
Nicolas Maduro described himself as a prisoner of war.
He walked into the courtroom and wished folks there Happy New Year 3 times.
Happy New Year.
Shook some hands and sat down at the defense table.
Federal prosecutors accused Maduro, his wife, sons, and others of partnering with some of the most violent and prolific drug traffickers and narco-terrorists in the world.
What the government is alleging is they literally were handing out passports to drug dealers. They were engaging in murder and kidnapping, using the diplomacy, using the veil of the Venezuelan government.
He, his wife, and 4 others are charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy, conspiracy to import cocaine, and possession of machine guns.
He was like, yo soy inocente, no soy culpable, I'm innocent, I am not guilty, mi país está sin presidente, my country is without a president. It was just a heavy, heavy moment.
Let's bring in our panel now, and we're joined by Wesley Tabor, who led the DEA in Venezuela between 2010 and 2012, when Maduro was still vice president to Hugo Chavez. And we have Arnold August, a journalist who was invited to Venezuela several times as an election observer and has met President Maduro on a number of occasions. Arnold, we've all read this indictment against Maduro. It alleges that he, quote, sits atop a corrupt, illegitimate government and has transported thousands of tons of cocaine to the United States. Let's take that second part first, that he's transported huge amounts of cocaine to America. What do you make of those allegations? Is Nicolas Maduro the kind of man who would get involved in that?
Well, I'm glad that you framed that question that way, because it allows me to expand for a couple of seconds on the fact that I was in Caracas. I met with President Maduro personally on 2 occasions. I heard him speak in a very close meeting with about 10, 15 people on at least 1 occasion. And in my view, based on these contacts and the history of him as a former bus driver, I would say this is not the type of person who would get involved in any way, shape, or form in drug transportation and drug trafficking. Just, fast forward to when he was in court. If he was such an opportunist person, he would have, found some kind of a way to get out of the fact that they are trying to put him into a maximum security, very dangerous prison where he can lose his life, as Epstein did, and eventually spend the rest of his life in prison. But he decided to stand up for his principle. I think that says a lot about the person.
Wesley, you have no doubt that Venezuela has been moving vast amounts of cocaine into the United States.
Yeah, listen, I haven't met Maduro personally, but I've met many members of the Cartel de los Soles, the generals. I had so many contacts there. My job was go into Venezuela, find the people you need to find, arrest the people that need to be arrested, extradite them to the United States, help build a case, help build a witness list so we could have a successful prosecution. And, a couple meetings with Maduro where he's talking about elections and so forth, you're not going to get a full figure and the breadth of what this guy's about. I can't talk about a lot of the inside stuff that I know, obviously, But I'm telling you, when you read the indictment, the evidence is damning. And I have sources to this day that are in Venezuela, all over Venezuela. And we have a very profound understanding of what's going on. And it's not just Maduro himself, it's his wife, it's his son. Tren de Aragua is working directly with Celia Flores and Maduro's son. And, you know, the information that I'm getting, very, very detailed information, clearly outlines this. The evidence is overwhelming.
But the problem here, Arnold, as you told me in our pre-interview, this cartel apparently doesn't even exist.
Yes, so I guess we also have a question to ask of our other guests. You know, in the indictment, they say that Maduro is guilty of collaborating with the Cartel de los Soles. At the same time, however, the Department of Justice of the United States say that no longer exists. So that raised a lot of credibility, a lot of problem of credibility with regards to the charges against Maduro. And I think the other guest is right that they will bring in experts who have been dealing with this whole issue over the years. Very good, but this is a double-edged sword. Who knows what will be uncovered in the coming months when Maduro goes to trial? Who will the very experienced defense lawyer of President Maduro, will he bring up, for example, scandals that are similar to the 1980s Contra-Iran scandal, when the U.S. was found guilty of illegally shipping cocaine in order to fund the Nicaragua war, the Contra war against the Nicaraguan revolutionary government? This can come up in the actual trial and will backfire against the Trump regime trying to discredit and imprison Maduro for life.
I've been involved in hundreds of trials. I was deeply involved in this investigation, and I am fully confident in the case that the United States government has, because not only do we have experts, but we have people that were involved in this. We have information that is memorialized, that is irrefutable. And to kind of turn the blind eye to that and say, you know, well, listen, he was kind of a good guy. This could happen, that could happen. Maybe the U.S. government was involved in some nefarious activities. It's just not going to hold water. This is going forward, and it's going to happen.
Wesley, we've seen the pictures of Maduro being escorted by DEA agents. You know, you were the head of that agency in Venezuela. By what authority does the DEA take a head of state into custody?
You know, listen, we don't recognize him as the true president of Venezuela. And why should we? Because, you know, listen, you could say we observed the elections, everything was true, and we have confidence in it. When I have sources and information that the whole electoral system was rigged, and it was rigged, according to the experts that I have, and I have many of them, very detailed experts that tell me exactly what happened. I'm not going to go into those details now. But in the end, he was not the head of state. He was a dictator. He oppressed his people. He destroyed his company. He created a permissive environment where terrorists from the Middle East, including Hamas, Hezbollah, we have IRGC, we have FARC, we have ELN, and the vacuum he's created in Venezuela for the Western Hemisphere was a true threat. And that's why he was dealt with the way he was.
So you're saying that he wasn't a legitimate head of state, therefore didn't enjoy sovereign immunity. Arnold August was actually there during a number of the elections. What's your take on that?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. What I saw when I was there for the last presidential elections was that before that, there were rallies being held by the Maduro forces as well as the Maria Machado opposition forces. And what I saw there before the elections, participating in it, that the number of people participating in the pro-Maduro electoral move far outnumbered the Machado forces. And Machado forces were allowed to participate in these demonstrations, but they were very small. Now, during the elections, I saw very clearly people came up to the electoral board where they were supposed to vote. They had to make sure their name was on the electoral list. Once inside, they gave a thumbprint, and this is to make sure that no one could vote twice and that they are registered legally to vote. Then they go behind a closed print screen, computerized booth where they register their vote. And I would say that everything points to the fact that the elections were legitimate. And even if the indictment repeats that they were not legitimate, this does not make it a fact.
Last answer, Wesley.
You know, hearing this, I'm just kind of astonished. You know, the reason, and we're conflating two things here, right? So we have, you know, Maduro's forces were out, you know, to the roof, and Machado's were not. Well, you know why they weren't? Because they get shot, they get put in prison. We have thousands of opposition members in prison that have been tortured, removed from their families. There's, you know, the security of the country was taken away. I mean, what do you think is going to happen when you have a dictatorship? That the Constitution's been changed, the erosion and the faith and confidence in the electoral system there. Obviously, the information I have and many others have, and you can Google some of this stuff, but I have even better information that I can't go into, is the system was from the inside manipulated, the electronic tally, everything. We have programmers, technical consultants, all these things were rigged inside. And this is the Cuban playbook. And the Russians and the Chinese were involved. This is a global power play because this is the Western Hemisphere's hotspot. And all these bad actors wanted to be there.
Arnold, if you need a rebuttal, come in.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much for allowing me to get in on this. Well, regarding the political prisoners and repression, I was also there on the night of the election of July 29th, the night of the elections, and the following day. There were, in fact, various skirmishes, but my own view, my own contacts, what I saw from my own eyes there in Caracas, that these young vandals were paid by the U.S., arming them in order to create chaos, to commit violent crimes against, for example, clinics, schools, a bust of Hugo Chavez. These are the ones who were arrested, and they deserve to be arrested. They were collaborating and paid by the United States to try and sow chaos and to provide an excuse for the United States to intervene, and later the next day and right up to today claim that the elections were not legitimate and that Maduro repressed forces who were against it.
Arnold August and Wesley Tabor, thank you both very much for your analysis today. Really appreciate that. Well, drugs is one reason for the snatching of Maduro. The other is oil. Unlike George W. Bush before him, President Trump is very willing to admit oil does play a significant part in his calculations.
We're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago. A lot of money is coming out of the ground, out of the ground, out of the ground.
President Trump is just saying what everyone already knows. Venezuela's overflowing with liquid gold, producing 1 million barrels of crude every day. And they won't be running out in anyone's lifetime. It's estimated to have the biggest oil reserves in the world, some 300 billion barrels. That's far more than Saudi Arabia in second place.
We have tremendous energy in that country. It's very important that we protect it. We need that for ourselves. We need that for the world.
The world is already consuming Venezuelan oil, with China buying well over half of it, followed by the United States, India, Spain, and Cuba. The Trump administration clearly wants to control who gets the oil.
This is about ensuring that no sanctioned oil can come in and out until they make changes to the governance of that entire industry.
And on top of that, Trump wants Venezuela to produce more oil, much more oil, and this is his plan to ramp up production.
We have to rebuild their whole infrastructure. The infrastructure is rotted. It's actually very dangerous. It's blow-up territory. Oil is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing to take out of the ground. Much of it is stuff that we put there 25 years ago.
But who will pay for all of this? Trump promises it won't be the U.S. taxpayer.
So we're going to have the big oil companies go in. They're going to fix the infrastructure. They're going to invest money. We're not going to invest anything. We're going to just take care of the country.
Right now, Venezuela produces 1 million barrels per day. At its peak, it was more like 3 million. If it does return to those astronomical levels, who'll get all the money?
We're going to run the country right. It's going to be run very judiciously, very fairly. It's going to make a lot of money. We're going to give money to the people. We're going to reimburse people that were taken advantage of. We're going to take care of everybody. It's very important.
Okay, let's bring in our next panel. And we have the Venezuelan-American journalist, Germania Rodriguez Poleo. And we have Ed Herz, an economist specializing in the energy industry He teaches at the University of Houston. Ed, let me start with you. And the most recent information about Trump and Venezuela's oil is that Delcy Rodriguez, the caretaker president, you might call her, has said to him that she would turn over between 30 and 50 million barrels of oil to the United States immediately. By what right, does Trump claim the oil?
I think he's negotiating with a gun pointed at Venezuela's head. I'm not sure they have 30 to 50 million barrels handy, but if we look at it, they've been exporting about 500,000 barrels a day. That's 100 days of Venezuela's outgoing oil production, for which they receive hard currency. So there are a lot of details yet to be worked out on this.
Germania, as an American Venezuelan, do you welcome this or do you resent this?
We Venezuelans absolutely welcome what the Trump administration is doing, taking an interest in our country. Currently, the wealth of our oil, our natural resources that are being given to Cuba, Iran, China, Russia are being used to oppress my people, my friends, those that I know who are still political prisoners today. So the Venezuelans have not seen the oil wealth in decades. It's the opposite. It's used to oppress us. So yes, we welcome the Trump administration's intervention in Venezuela.
Ed, do you want to say anything on that point before I move on?
Armania is absolutely right. Venezuelan production 55, 60 years ago was 3.5 million barrels a day. Today, it's less than 1.5 million barrels a day. For the last 25 plus years, that revenue has been diverted to the regimes of Chavez and Maduro and not to the citizens. Venezuela was once the second or third wealthiest nation in this hemisphere. Per capita income, a tremendous standard of living, and that's just been taken from the citizens.
But generally,
and that was when our ally was the U.S. So we want to go back to being allies with the U.S. and no longer with Russia, Cuba, and Iran.
Ed, you know, having said that, you generally oppose American intervention in Venezuela. Is that right?
Yes. You know, this oil adventurism has never worked out for the United States. It didn't work out in 1989-90 when the Soviet Union collapsed. George W. Bush figured this out with Iraq. President Obama figured this out with Libya. You know, General and President Eisenhower in 1956 rejected going into the Sinai to retake the Suez Canal. In fact, he famously stated, "Let them boil in their own oil."
Germania, Ed brings up some precedent that might be very worrying. You have any reservations?
So important to address this argument that's constantly brought up with Venezuela, Libya, and Iraq. The only similarity we have with those countries is that we have oil. We are a country with a history of democracy. We have Western values. We do not have ethnic or religious differences. And last year, Venezuelans overwhelmingly voted to get rid of Maduro. We just need help getting this crime organization that took over our country 26 years ago. We had a country, we had a democracy. The Americans don't have to teach us what democracy is.
Thank you. Just for the record, we've only just had an international election observer on, and he stated the opposite. He said that it was a legitimate election. I appreciate your point, though.
That's absolutely, I hope you push back on that.
We had a guest on who absolutely pushed back on that. Let me move on to the revenues, if I might. Trump said on Truth Social that the oil might be worth something in the region of $2.8 billion, and he says it was to be controlled by me as president to ensure benefits for both Americans and Venezuelans. Germania, do you feel confident that Venezuelans will actually see the benefit if that much oil is sold?
Listen, it's a crucial hour. We Venezuelans have many concerns. We are happy to see Maduro in prison, but Delcy Rodriguez is in many ways worse. We who have been watching this situation know that Delcy Rodriguez and Diosdado Cabello, who controls those who have the guns, are not just going to do as Trump says. It's not true that the United States is controlling Venezuela today. Venezuela remains under a dictatorship. It remains under control of Cuba. And if Donald Trump and the White House want to see Venezuelan oil, they're going to have to free Venezuela truly. And that's where our interest of Venezuelans, which is freedom and democracy, align with those of Trump and the White House.
Ed, Trump says it's worth $2.8 billion. Is that correct? And also, second part of the question, Do you think he will be sharing the proceeds with the Venezuelans?
Well, at market price, that appears to be about right. It's going to be very difficult to get the proceeds down to the Venezuelans. Remember, all he's done is remove Maduro. The rest of the regime is fully in place. I believe the Trump administration has viewed this as something akin to a Wall Street takeover. So, for example, if BP bought ExxonMobil or the reverse, the regime is still in place. PDVSA is still in place. All of the officials are still in place. And so to make sure the money is distributed and used for the benefit of Venezuelan society is going to take a different apparatus. And I don't think the Trump administration has thought that far along the line.
Well, to their defense, Marco Rubio has said, so long as we have an armada, a US armada around Venezuela, we have the leverage over the current government or the current regime. They will do as they're told. Let's move on, though, from that point. And I want to ask you about other types of leverage. Geopolitical analysts have said, some have said, that the United States now, if they are controlling Venezuela's oil, have more clout with the likes of Russia and China. Ed, do you think that's true?
Absolutely not. I mean, this rationale that Trump is going in to reclaim the oil for Americans, I mean, my goodness, he could do that against Putin. Russia expropriated ExxonMobil's assets twice. All across the Middle East, when OPEC formed, they nationalized the oil reserves and threw out the Seven Sisters. Everybody who's producing oil that had U.S. companies involved at some point and expropriated the assets needs to be worried. I mean, frankly, even Israel, who turned the tables on Noble Energy that developed the offshore gas fields. This rationale does not hold water.
Germania, come in.
In an eventual geopolitical issue with Russia, 1,000% having Venezuela's oil industry recovered and working as an ally with the United States. Venezuela not only has oil, it has huge reserves of natural gas. 1,000% having Venezuela and PDVSA back as an ally would give leverage to the United States against Russia, Iran, and China.
But will Venezuela be a reliable partner for these U.S. oil companies, Germania?
Well, today, absolutely not. And that goes back to what I said. It is in the interest, if the White House wants to recover PDVSA, they're going to have to get the dictatorship out. And they're still not out. And that's what the oil industries, the oil companies have told the Trump administration. We can't go back yet. Diosdado Cabello is still running the streets with his armed thugs. They still don't respect private property. So no, if Trump wants to take Venezuela's oil to recover the industry, you need to get the dictatorship out.
Ed, just a final question. Global oil prices, I'm afraid everyone might be thinking, will oil prices and energy prices around the world now be on a downward trajectory if more of Venezuelan oil comes on tap?
And the answer is no. The Saudis, OPEC Plus, and of course, Venezuela was a charter member of OPEC, are controlling the price of oil. Keep in mind, President Trump is going to face some tremendous backlash from the domestic U.S. oil industry. What's been announced is essentially a socialization of the oil patch in Venezuela for the benefit of a couple, 3 or 4 U.S. oil companies. 99% of the U.S. oil producers are free market types. And they're not going to like this unleveling of the playing field, if you will, this subsidy going directly, their tax dollars, if you will, going directly to create a new competitor against them.
Germania, come in.
We have to understand what's going on in Venezuela today. Chevron right now has gotten special permissions from both White House of Biden and Trump to continue working in Venezuela. This is a misinformation that the U.S. sanctions completely on the oil industry got Americans out. Today, Chevron is in Venezuela. Already, Chevron is the only company that's somehow allowed to work under the Chavista regime. So again, what's going on in Venezuela today in the oil industry, it's worst case scenario to say that that now it's going to be bad is not understanding what's going on today in PDVSA, which does not work and relies on Chevron. They don't even have an oil rig themselves.
Germania Rodriguez Poleo and Ed Hers, thank you both very much for your analysis today. Really appreciate that. And thank you at home and on your phones for watching. If you want to see this or any of our previous episodes, do go to our channel on YouTube. Just type in Nexus TRT World. Until next week then, goodbye.